Welcome students. I hope you all are safe at your home during the spread of the pandemic in the country. Due to the closure of the school, let us begin with the online sessions for class 10th, subject science, and the very first topic, chemical reactions and equations. Before starting, let us discuss the learning objectives for the session today. So here we are going to learn about the changes which we see all around us. As we have learned in the previous classes also, that the changes are of two types, physical and chemical changes. Physical changes and chemical changes are the type of changes where sometimes a new substance is formed and sometimes a new substance is not formed. Let us discuss it later on. In this session, we are also going to see the difference between the physical and the chemical changes. Then what are the chemical reactions? What are reactants and products, and of course we are going to discuss some of the examples related to the chemical reactions. Let us begin and let us take a look on the next slide. Now in the slide you can observe here the changes which we can see in our daily life. In the picture you can see two parts. On the left hand side there are physical changes and on the right side some chemical changes are shown. If you see the physical change part, you can see here three examples quoted here. In the first one, a pencil is shown which is then broken into two pieces. In the next example, a solid piece of butter is shown which is then melted. And in the third example, there are some ice cubes kept in a beaker which due to some of the reasons are melt into water. So here you can observe here that the pencil which was in the full complete form is now, after the reaction, it is in broken pieces or broken parts. The solid change of butter changes to the liquid state of butter and the solid state of water changes to the liquid state of water. But the conclusion over here is that each object which we can see in the picture, it remains the same, only now it is changed into a different state. That is, some are in the melted state, some are in the broken state. But exactly, the chemical composition of the object remains the same, as the two broken pieces of the pencil are pencils only. There is no change in the chemical composition at all. Whereas, on the other part, if you see the chemical changes, the examples quoted are, the first one you can see a log of wood. If you burn that log of wood, it will produce a lot of heat and light energy along with the ash. Now the ash which is formed here is a new substance of course, and it has some new chemical properties which are surely different from the properties of the log of wood. So when a new substance is formed, it is surely a chemical change. In the second example, if you see, there are some ingredients which are mixed in a bowl and something new, very special is formed after the reaction. So it's because a new substance is formed with a new property, so hence it is also a chemical change. If you see the third example, that is an egg. When the egg is cooked into an omelette or the omelette, which seems very tasty too. Now this omelette also has some very new chemical properties other than egg. Of course, the state is also changed along with the change in the chemical properties. The shape also changes, the size also changes, and with the change of the properties too. Hence, these all examples are of chemical change. I hope these examples are very clear to all of you. Now let us take a look on the next slide. Here, let us discuss the definition for the physical and the chemical change. Physical change are the processes in which no new substances are formed. No new substances are formed, I repeat again, and such type of changes are called a physical change, as the melting of the ice is a physical change. Then coming to the chemical change, the process in which the original substance lost its nature and identity too, and forms a very new chemical substance with some new properties. So such type of changes are called a chemical change, as we have discussed the examples like burning of wood is an example of chemical change. Okay, moving on to the next slide, let us discuss the difference between the physical and the chemical change. Now if you see, in the physical change, no new substance is formed, whereas in case of chemical change, a new substance is formed. physical change, the properties of the substance remains the same, whereas in the chemical change, the properties of the substance change. If you observe the chemical change, it is mostly irreversible change. Once the new substance is formed, cannot be changed back to the original one. Whereas in case of physical change, it is mostly reversible type of change. Because the product which we see after the reaction, it is reversible. We can get back the original one. I hope the difference is clear to you all. Okay, moving on to the next slide. Now let us discuss some more examples of physical changes. In the first picture you can see a crushed can. As the shape and size during crushing, the shape and size of the can are changed, but the properties do not change. So it's an example of physical change. The melting of ice, boiling of the water. When water is boiled, it changes into vapor state. Only the state changes, but the chemical composition remains the same, so it is also a physical change. Then breaking of the glass, dissolving sugar in water, shredding of the paper, chopping of the wood, mixing green and red colored pebbles, do not bring or do not produce a new substance. Hence, these all are the examples of physical changes. Okay, moving on to the next one. Let us discuss some few more examples of chemical changes. See, a very interesting example is given here, that is rusting of iron. Iron when is kept in open space, it reacts with the moisture and the air and it forms a red-brown colored flaky substance on it which is known as rust. Now this rust formed on the surface of the iron is of course a new substance and hence this change is a chemical change. Then next example is burning of wood. As we have discussed, after burning of wood, ashes form which is a very new substance other than wood. Then metabolism. Metabolism means all those reactions which are going on in a biological body. Like digestion in our body, respiration in our body, they all are metabolic activities which are going on and surely they produce new substances in the body, hence they all are chemical changes. Then cooking of an egg or a chapati or a vegetable, they all are chemical changes because at the end they produce some of the new substance which has of course different properties from the original ones. Then electroplating is also an example of chemical change because in electroplating a metal is coated with a desirable another metal. So it's also a chemical type of change. Then rotting of the banana. Rotting of the banana, fireworks, battery, reactions which occur in the battery, they all are examples of chemical changes which we can see in our day-to-day life. Now moving on to the next slide, let us now discuss what are chemical reactions. Chemical reactions are the processes which involve a chemical change. Chemical change which we have discussed now only before, they all are the examples of chemical reactions. Now in the chemical reactions, we have some original substances which may react together to give some new products to us. So those substances which are originally present and which may react together to give us some new substance further, they all are called the reactants. For example, when coke is burnt in air, coke is a form of carbon. So when carbon and oxygen are mixing together, now they are the reactants because they are mixing together and they give us a very new product which is carbon dioxide. So this carbon dioxide formed is the product. So products are the new substances which are formed in the reaction. Now here I have to give a special note on it that chemical reaction involves breaking of the bonds in the reactants and forming of the new bonds in the products. So when the chemical reaction occurs, the bonds which are present in the compounds of the reactants, they break and then new bonds are formed in the products. So we can say in another way that chemical reactions are nothing but the rearrangement of the atoms. Okay, I hope that is clear to you all. Now let us give a look onto the next slide. So here we are going to discuss some of the examples of chemical reactions. So the first example here I want to quote is the reaction between magnesium and oxygen. Now, as magnesium and oxygen are reacting together, they both are the reactants. And after reaction, they are giving us a very new product which is called magnesium oxide. Here in the picture also you can observe that when magnesium ribbon is burned in the presence of oxygen, you get a white colored powder which is magnesium oxide. Now this magnesium oxide formed in the reaction is the new substance which has different chemical properties than magnesium and oxygen. So this is also an example of chemical reaction here. Okay, moving on to the next example. It is the reaction between lead nitrate and potassium iodide. So it is very clearly seen on the picture that in the first one you have two beakers and both the beakers have some transparent solutions in it. Now observe the second picture very clearly when both of the solutions are mixed together. As we start mixing them, we can observe a yellow colored product formed in the reaction. If we go on adding the solution further, you can see the increase in the concentration of this product formed and the complete beaker gets filled with the yellow colored precipitate. And that yellow colored precipitate is nothing but lead iodide which is formed in the reaction. One another product is also formed which is potassium nitrate which remains in the solution as it is colorless. So this reaction is also a precipitate type of reaction where a precipitate is formed in the reaction. So this is also an example for the chemical reactions. Now moving on to the next slide. It is the reaction between zinc and dilute sulfuric acid. As we all know that dilute sulfuric acid is a very strong acid which is used in the labs. Its formula is H2SO4. If you can observe the picture here, there is an experimental setup shown in which in the test tube zinc granules are taken in which the sulfuric acid is added. As soon as we add the sulfuric acid, reaction starts and a new product is formed which is zinc sulfate which remains in the test tube. And another product which is formed is the hydrogen gas. As it is a gas, it starts moving upwards in the upward direction and passes through the delivery tube shown in the picture. And this hydrogen gas, when it is passed in another beaker containing soap solution, it comes out in the form of bubbles. Now, if a burning matchstick is brought near to this gas, it burns with a pop sound. So this is also a test for the hydrogen gas. If a burning matchstick is brought near this gas, it burns with a popping sound. The gas burns with a popping sound. So these are the three examples which we have discussed related to the chemical reactions in which the original substances react together and give us some new products, and all such type of reactions are examples of chemical changes. So I hope you all are clear with this all. Now let us conclude the session for today. Now in the session today we have discussed about the two types of changes, that is physical and chemical change. We have also discussed about the differences between physical and chemical changes. Then we had a look on what are chemical reactions, what are reactants, what are products, and of course we have discussed some examples of chemical reactions all around us. So that's all for today's session. I hope you all have enjoyed. Stay home, stay safe, and we'll meet in the next online video session. Till then, goodbye.